Hello and welcome back to my small little library. As we are nearing the end of the year, it's the middle of December already, the top 10 lists are coming. I have decided this year to start with the worst books that I've read this year, just to, start with the bad stuff and end the year with the good stuff. So yeah, next week will be my top 10 favorite books I've read this year, but this week we're gonna talk about the top 10 worst books I've read this year. I do have a few honorable mentions that I just have to, sprinkle in there, but they're technically not part of the top 10 because I have read quite a few really not so great books this year, and I kind of had to, really get 10 and not go overboard. So yeah, we'll have a few honorable mentions here and there. But let me just say this. The order that I'm going to talk about them is random. I cannot tell you the worst book that I've read this year. I just don't think it's fair to any book, so we're gonna stick to top 10. And they are just 10 random. The placing doesn't say anything about the book. They're just, in my opinion, bad books, or books that I didn't enjoy. And yeah, let's talk about them. All of these had 1 or 2 stars. I don't know. They're equally bad. Some have a few more redeeming points, others not. So yeah, it is what it is, Okay, I'm sorry about the lighting. I cannot fix it any better. It is a really dark day out, even though it is still relatively early in the day. So yeah, I'm sorry. My ring light isn't making it any better. I don't know, I can't fix it right now, I'm really sorry. But yeah, the first book we're starting with is Map of Bones by James Rowlands. This is one of those like military, not really military, but like special unit thrillers, where you have, in this case, the Sigma Force, and they have to, go after this other cultish teams, and they shoot at each other, and, in the end, the Sigma Force comes out as the winner of it all, But yeah, this one I gave 2 stars. My main problem was that it was just never ending, and there really weren't any consequences. Every time there was a shootout, obviously Sigma Force, came through because they didn't want to kill off anyone, because this is a series and you want to have your main characters left over. But yeah, that means that there's also no consequence for any action in the book, which makes it really, really boring to read. So we have 2 stars. Really, I don't know, it's not a series I would recommend anyone to pick up, let's be honest. Then, the second book on my pile is Under the Lake by Stuart Woods. This is, it really stands for a lot of bad horror books I've read this year. We're coming to a few honorable mentions after this one, but yeah, the thing is, you have this really small town in America, the people all know each other, and then our main character, a failing author, comes into the city and he gets a cottage by his brother-in-law and he is supposed to write a book there. And then, he gets involved in like the community and it turns into like a corrupt cop and incest story. And I am so sick of bad horror books that whip out the incest trope and then go with it and run with it, and I hate it. I cannot stand it. I think it's just, I don't know, why? Is it necessary? Do you have to? Like, it's not scary, it's just a sad reality for some and a horrible reality for others. There's nothing that makes that a good horror book. There isn't really any horror here, it's just corrupt people and everyone's an asshole. So yeah, I didn't like the book. Every time I think about it, I want to rant about it. I still gave it 2 stars because the writing style isn't too bad. It reads relatively quickly, it's just the story is so asinine. I just think there's any saving for this book, so yeah. My journey into old horror books hasn't gone as I imagined it. But that might be primarily the case because I just bought a big box of horror books on eBay. And yeah, turns out most of them really weren't good books, which probably is why they were so cheap. But, why not try it? I think it's a fun thing to just buy a box of books you don't know if you will like them or not and then just read them. But yeah, that box wasn't really good. And then that is one of the books. As a few honorable mentions, we have The Farm by Scott Nicholson, also small town, not that incesty, but small town, you know, outsiders coming in and then things going to shit. Then we have Family Inheritance. This I was really, really sad about, but it wasn't the same box. It's more of a thriller, but this is just too over the top, which I also didn't enjoy because of that. And then Pet is a horror book that I'm convinced is more like a teen horror book and not an adult horror book, which I feel like it's advertised as. And they choose the horse as the scary thing in the book, which I'm really sorry, but a horse just isn't scary. Also, the author kind of like had like a checklist and put every horror book trope in there, like checking them off, not really connected. Really bad. The Pet by Charles L. Grant. So those were also all books that came out of that box. Then we have one other that made its way onto the list that also came out of the box, but this one got 1 star. This was really, really bad. It's called Charmed Life. It's by Bernard Taylor. And you have a guy who lost his wife and his son. Or sons, technically too. And he really cannot let go. Like, the woman doesn't really want to have anything to do with him at some point, and she just cannot let go, and then he has an accident, and while he is in a coma from the accident, his wife dies, and their second child dies as well. And the first child died before that from an accident, which he feels himself responsible for. And so he is traveling, he stops his traveling, and he goes back to the town, and for some reason he thinks he can find closure there. And then you have just 2 cults, religious cults, weird cults just. One wants to see him die, one wants to see him live, and they have something to do with fate. They're really unimportant. It's just really doesn't matter. And then you have, you know, the weird family secrets that come out, and the weird mother-in-law that really hates him for whatever reason. She doesn't really know him. Stuff like that. The way the characters talk is so stilted and weird. It just does not feel natural. So yeah, I really didn't enjoy reading through it. It really felt horrible to make your way through that book, and that made it really, really unreadable in my opinion. Another book that I looked really forward to because of the blurb. This is The Crocodile Bird by Ruth Randall, and pretty much the blurb tells you, you know, you have a mother-daughter duo, and the mother did some bad things, and the daughter finds out because police come and want to take the mother away. And to save the daughter, the mother sends the daughter off, and instead of going where the mother said she's supposed to go, she goes to her secret boyfriend, and they just drive off, and the story goes from there. And pretty much the whole book is just the daughter's perspective of everything, and she tells the story of what happened to the mother. And the blurb kind of is like, you know, will the daughter be like the mother, you know, is there any kind of connection? But the thing is, the mother isn't a bad person. She just wants to, you know, save her daughter and herself. And yes, she does dumb things, but in the beginning it's self-defense. And from there, it then spirals a little bit out, but nothing really like, you know, the mother isn't going on a rampage and killing 300 people or anything, you know. She just is really afraid and tries to, you know, stay in her place, and to do that, she kills some people, which obviously isn't like an acceptable thing to do, but, you know, she does it out of love and stuff. And so the whole point of is the daughter like the mother just really is so insensible. Like, it doesn't make any sense, because it isn't like the mother has any like mental health problems or like anything like that, you know. It's just a woman trying to make sure that she and her daughter have a place in the world. And yeah, after you start to realize that, the whole blurb is just gone, because you start to realize, obviously, the daughter isn't like the mother, and the mother isn't really that bad. And yeah, the boyfriend turns out to be the asshole, and then just like the last page or two, the daughter is like, oh, am I like my mother? No, I'm not. And it's dumb. I'm sorry. It's dumb. I was really disappointed because the blurb made it sound so interesting. This like play with like, okay, is the mother okay? Does she have something, mental wise? And what does the daughter make of all of that? But the police never come into this. Really, like they take the mother away, and that is that. And it's just, it's just a retelling of what happened to the mother more than anything else. So yeah, not really interesting and not that good. Then I have one of the few non-fiction books that were really disappointing. This one I have owned for quite some time. My partner gifted this to me because I wanted to read more into stuff like this. And I only really got around this year to read it, and it's called The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin. And my biggest problem with this book is that it feels like it's more geared towards someone working in like a corporate office and what they can do to keep their work more organized. But I feel like it sounds like it's for like a private person. I mean, the undertitle is Thinking Straight in the Age of Information Overload. I wanted a book how you can do things to make your life easier. But this book was just so weirdly targeted towards a work environment and nothing else really, that it just wasn't helpful at all. It wasn't what I wanted, and I think that the book doesn't make it clear that it's really not like for private persons, but it's more like, for corporate structure and for your work environment and stuff like that. And nothing would, when it comes to like, going off of work and stuff like that. So yeah, I was really disappointed once I realized that, and yeah, it didn't get better. So yeah, I gave it 2 stars. There were really, really few good parts in the beginning, but other than that, really not great. Now, if I had to, but yeah, I think if I had to tell you what was the worst book I've read this year, I think I actually could tell you that is this. Dan Brown Origin. The biggest disappointment. And it took me nearly a year and a half to finish this book. It is so bad. I really loved the first 3 in the series, What is it? Angels and Demons, Inferno, and the Da Vinci Code. I think those are the first 3. I really liked those. They were about interpreting symbols and finding a way through all of the puzzles and the hints, and finding something out in the end that has kind of like a cultural significance, and just solving a riddle more or less. This one is just go from one place to the other and get hunted there and survive all of it without consequence, and in the end really nothing mattered. That is what this is. Also, I really like the idea of the book because it has to do with AI and computers and religion on the other hand. Obviously, they all have to do with religion. But I like the idea that you have somebody who wants to tell people I can tell you there's no God, and then that just fizzled out so fast, and it just was such a weird book. It just wasn't any fun. All of the nice riddles you had in the first ones, where they had to look at statues and find the small hints and look into library texts and find, the connections. All of that isn't in here at all. All of that is lost. The first one, it's just, it feels a little bit like if Dan Brown was tired of writing the series, but he wanted to still write another book, and I mean, this book is thick, so why did he write such a big book if it feels like he really didn't want to write it anymore? So yeah, 1 star with, yeah, it's really I was really angry, once I finished it. I was just angry at the book. There really wasn't any other emotion, but a little bit of disappointment, but I got over that a year and a half ago, and then when I forced myself to finish the book because I didn't want to DNF the 5th part in a series, I was just angry. And I'm still angry because I feel like he did the series so dirty. And he did the main character so dirty. It could have been so much better. But no, he had to make it bad. Don't know why. If you're here, this is one I've read not so far long ago. Julian Barnes, The Sense of an Ending. This is one of the most pretentious books out there. I kind of compared it to The Catcher in the Rye. I find that to be also incredibly pretentious and annoying, and really disliked reading that. This one is as well. Pretty much our main character has a shitty life. It's his own fault. And he's just, the whole book he's like, oh my god, it's so annoying, it's so bad, what have I done wrong, what is that, oh, maybe it's the other people. Really, if I want to hear somebody whine for like a whole book, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, it's it's the whole thing of like misremembering, and I don't know, it feels so pretentious because it's like, if he's old now, the main character, and he remembers like his school time, what's happened after the I think there's the suicide of somebody in there, and one sentence in the blurb is like, he certainly never tried to hurt anybody. But it's like this, if people go and like, oh, I didn't want to hurt anybody, but they just are pretty much behaving like a dick. That is what it is, If you have, these people who are like, oh no, but I'm so nice, and I didn't want to say something not nice, I didn't want to hurt their feelings, but they're doing it constantly and then telling you, no, I didn't want to do that. That is this book. And I hate it. Yeah, I hated it with passion. But Dan Brown was a little bit more infuriating. But yeah, don't read it, it's not worth it. But maybe if you like The Catcher in the Rye, maybe you should read this. It's like, story-wise, how the story is told and all of the whining, and it does go into the direction of Catcher in the Rye. Then we have another one that was kind of a disappointment. This is Das Labyrinth der träumenden Bücher by Walter Merth. I think in English it's called The Labyrinth of Dreaming Books. It should be. It's the second book in a series, and the first one is so good. It was one of my favorite books as a teenager, and I reread it. It is still great. It's the same author that wrote the 13 and a half Years of Captain Bluebeard, and books like that. He's a really, really popular German author. And I never really got around to continuing this series. I think there are 3 or 4 books out now. I think it might be 3 and the 4th is still in the writing. This was so disappointing because the first book, was a story in itself. It had a great ending. It didn't need a continuation. And this one plays out like 300 years after the first one, like a long time after the first one. But it's still the main character of the first one because he is a dinosaur. I think, yeah, he's a dinosaur. What is the word? A lizard. He's a lizard. And, they live really, really long lives. And so, pretty much this book is more or less a retelling of the first book. But as the second book, because he retells, like, half of this book is a theater, like a puppet theater. A thing of the story of the first book. It is so bad. And then the book ends with a cliffhanger that kind of ends where the blurb says the book is supposed to start. It is really bad. Pretty much the second book, what should have been the second book, is the third book. And I was really angry because I think it's such a cheap trick, He obviously wasn't ready to write the continuation, and so he slotted in there a really, really bad second book that rehashed the first story and gave you a little bit of adventure, but just barely, and then it ends where it should start. And that made me really, really sad, to be honest, because I just enjoyed the first one so much. Then I do want to know what the story of the third one is, but I kind of don't want to give him my money. So I might have to look into the secondhand market when it comes to the third book in the series, because I am really angry about that, because I think it's a cheap trick, to be honest. The book should never have been written. That is just my opinion about it. So if you ever read Walter Merth, just go with the first one, the the City of Dreaming books, just read that one. Take it as like a standalone, and it's amazing. Just not bother with the other ones. So yeah, 2 stars for that one, because I do like the world. Just the book was bad. And as an honorable mention, we have another German book by Das Mutantenkorps, or The Mutant Corps by Perry Rhodan, or like the main character is called Perry Rhodan, but it's by a lot of authors, so they always read the main character at the top. This was also a really unnecessary filler book. It's a space story. I just wouldn't recommend you read it. It's a really old story. I don't think it's really necessary to read it. But I do own quite a few of them, so I do want to read them, and I do want to preserve them because they are a really popular series, and the series is still going. Those are just the ones that were written right at the beginning in the 50s and 60s, and you can see that, you know. Then we have a true crime book, which that is incredibly rare for me to dislike a true crime book. This one, I thought I would get a cool book. It's by an indie author, I think, called Robert Keller, and it's called 25 Horrific Serial Killer Cases, Canadian Monsters. It is pretty much Wikipedia articles in a book, and I was kind of angry about that, because it looks like school essays. It's really like not a nice layout, and they read like Wikipedia entrant like articles, and I think this should never have been a book. I don't think this should have been sold. I get what he wants to do, but there's just really little research into the cases, and yeah, the only really interesting thing was there were some cases that I didn't know about, others I did know about, but yeah, all in all, you could just read the Wikipedia entries and you would have the same wisdom and facts about all of them than reading the book. So yeah, I was really sad about that one, because, you know, I was like, oh, I found an indie author who does true crime, it sounds really cool, and then you get that, you know, it's kind of disappointing. I think I gave that one, let me see, I gave that one 2 stars, because, you know, he tried. And I didn't want to be mean, to be honest. And then we have the last book, and that is the 10th, and that is In the Life of Puppet by T.J. Klune. Another really disappointing book. I gave it 2 stars. I like his writing style. The story just didn't do it for me. This is kind of like, it feels like an homage to Pinocchio, but it really didn't work out, and our main character, he's like young adult, late teens, and he develops this really weird relationship with the robot, and it is weirdly, comically sexual. It really didn't fit into the book. I found it to be really uncomfortable, and because the main characters, most of them are robots, it is so weird, and the humor of the book just didn't fit at all for me. But I feel like it's really, really personal opinion, because my partner always says I don't have a humor, and I have to agree with him. I don't find a lot of things funny that are like classically considered as funny. I just don't. But all of the jokes in here were weirdly sexual in a book where the main character, even though he is an adult technically, I think he's like 19 or something like that, he talks like a child, and that makes the book so hard to read, because you know that he's technically an adult, but he talks like a child, and then you have all of these sexual jokes, and they really ruined the book for me. And then you have really like not fitting steps, or like, you know, little mentionings of Pinocchio, which was really, really weird. I don't know, this really wasn't it for me, which I still haven't decided if I want to try another TJ Klune book, because I loved the House in the Syrian Sea, really loved that one, but I disliked this one so much that I'm not sure what is the outlier of the two, you know. But yeah, so these are the books that were really disappointing this year, and the bad ones that I've read. Hopefully next year we have more better books, but yeah, I think from the like roughly 140 books I've read this year, 25 or so really weren't great, which I think it's still like a good amount, but it was still disappointing, you know, because for a lot of these books I had really high hopes, and they obviously didn't work out. So yeah, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video and now which books to avoid now. And yeah, hopefully I will see you next week for the top 10 books that I've read in 2023. But yeah, until then, bye bye!